I'm Karen, and this is the Speak to Influence podcast. This is where we talk about communication and how to help you be heard, trusted, and taken seriously. Now, today we're going to talk about my favorite topic, communication. Most people assume that communication, hey, Kathy, thanks for being here today. Most people assume that communication has to do with dialogue. And it's true, dialogue is part of it, but it's really about being understood. It's about having your idea understood quickly, about knowing what the next steps are. It's about being trusted in what your ideas are and having people remember your key point. That is being understood. That is clear communication. And clear communicators have been shown in research to make more money, have more opportunities, and have better relationships in all aspects of their life. That's solid research. That's worth making sure that you're clear when you communicate. Now, what is clear communication? First of all, I want you to know that it's not perfection. It has nothing to do with that. It has nothing to do with charisma. It has everything to do with being understood and being clear in what you're talking about. So don't feel like you've got to be perfect to have these benefits. Now, the benefits that I've talked about of making more money and having more opportunity and better relationships, that's not just limited to people. Mistakes in communications happen in business all the time, and it's not just big corporate America. 86% of workplace failures happen because of communication and collaboration problems. 86%. And I would love to tell you that that is some abstract number, that only happens in big corporations and it will never happen to you. But I was the cause of a $10,000 mistake for a small advertising agency that I worked with. My account manager always checked the work that was going to be printed. I then reviewed it and signed off on it, got it printed. Well, we had a large billboard project across the state of Pennsylvania. And on the day that the billboards were posted, I found out that the telephone number was wrong. It was wrong because Ruth usually checked everything, including the phone number. And I usually double checked everything she did. But at this time, she was busy and she thought, oh, Karen's going to do it anyway. And I was busy and I thought, oh, Ruthie already did it anyway. Well, guess what? Nobody did it. It cost my agency $10,000. And that is a lot of money when you're a small marketing firm. So mistakes in communication come down to clear clarity in communication. Now, today we're going to do a big picture approach of some of the causes of poor communication. In later episodes, we'll do some deep dives into them and others. But right now, let's talk about the most underrated communication skill that I think there is. That is the pause. The pause is something that helps increase authority when you're speaking. The pause can help nervous people sound confident. And the pause helps listeners really process what you've said. So as opposed to saying, well, I was thinking that we could, and then we'll, the better way to say that is, I think that we should do plan B. Pause. Explain if necessary. Stop. I think we should do plan B. Pause. Let people digest it. And then if that requires an explanation, then give the explanation. And once you've given it, shut up. Stop talking. Don't make it more complicated than it needs to be. The other great thing about a pause is that it will help you reduce filler words. Hey, Melinda, we're glad you're here. Filler words are words like and, so, like, look here. Things that people say when they don't know what else to say. When I was in high school, I was awful at my ahs. I was always awing and umming my way through every conversation. Hey, Pam, welcome. Fortunately, I had an incredible communications teacher by the name of Mrs. Wallach. And Mrs. Wallach taught me that if I ever had felt an coming out, to stop talking, just pause. That's all I needed to do. Now, I'll tell you, it's hard. It's really hard to stop talking because we feel like silence is something that shouldn't be out there, but silence is part of communication. Now, I can tell you that when you pause, it's going to feel like an eternity to you. But for the person who's listening, it just sounds contemplative. For example, I'm a member of Toastmasters. It's an international organization that helps people speak better on stage and online and in person. That was my plug for Toastmasters. In my last Toastmaster speech that I did, I got up there, I was rocking it. I was doing a great job. And suddenly I forgot the next point I wanted to make. Totally gone. Now I could have freaked out, but instead what I did was I paused. Now it felt like eternity, but eventually my thought came back to my head and I continued talking. Well, when I got off the stage, I was mortified. I sat down, I was so embarrassed. But afterwards, a lot of people, including my evaluator, came up to me and told me what a great job I did. And for a few of them, I said, I know, but man, I lost it and I paused that long. Their comment to me was, we didn't think it was a long pause. We thought that that was just for emphasis. So that's how easy pauses can be. They may seem long to you, but they aren't to other people. So don't feel like you've got to get talking right away. Better to be quiet and sound smart than to open your mouth and say something silly. The next area of communication I want to talk about is clarity with pace. Hey, Monique, welcome. I'm glad you're here. Pace is the speed or slowness by which you talk. Now, how many of us have encountered people who talk so slow? I have an uncle, so slow. It is amazing. It takes forever to get through a conversation. And what happens is that I end up sort of zoning out because I'm waiting for him to finish what he's saying. So too slow, not good. Too fast, not good. Too fast is. So I thought we'd get together and here's what I thought we would talk about, and then we can see what we're going to do for lunch afterwards. Huh? So I thought we could get together and we'll see what we can have for lunch afterwards. Major difference. It's important to find the pace that makes the most sense for your conversation. Now, when you're excited, obviously you're going to speak a little more quickly, you'll be a little more excited and fast. If you are feeling really down about something, perhaps your communication was a little more somber. But there's a sweet spot in the middle, and that's the pace that clear communicators have. That's the pace that helps people understand you without getting lost because you're unclear or not caring what you're talking about because you're taking forever. That pace is very important for clarity in communications. The next one is another one of my favorites. And Richard, I'm glad you're here just in time to hear it. The next thing is called point first. How many times in your conversation have you taken about 3 minutes to warm up the conversation? You want to talk about the cat, but before you talk about the cat, you want to talk about your morning and the day and what you had for lunch. And then you want to get to, and by the way, I need someone to feed my cat next week. Can you help me? That's not clear communication. Clarity in communication goes right to the point first. And it's a 5-step process. What's the point? A 2 to 3 sentence explanation, an example if necessary. What are the next steps? Shut up. Make your point first, explain it briefly, give an example if necessary, make sure they understand the next step, and then be quiet. Don't talk. The ball is now in their court to discuss. That is clear communication. You need to give the listener the opportunity to be clear on what they're saying, what you're saying, and then you've got to stop talking so they can reply to you. And finally, one of the aspects of clear communication that's really critical is that you need to take your time and enunciate and articulate. Speech is a physical process. You have to move your mouth when you speak. And when you are articulating, you're probably going to move your mouth a little more than usual. If I'm just talking like this and I don't really want to move my mouth much, I'm mumbling. Mumbling is not authoritative. Mumbling is not clear. You need to articulate what you're going to say. This is most important for ESL speakers, although I've got to say there are plenty of Native American speakers that don't articulate or enunciate either. But clear communication is something that you need whether you're a native English speaker or you're an English as a second language speaker. If you're an ESL speaker, you want to be clear. That may require you speaking a little bit slower than you normally speak. It may require you to think in shorter sentences as opposed to rambling or over-explaining. And most importantly, you want to figure out what are the consonants and vowels that exist in English that you don't have in your language. Interestingly enough, there are a lot of languages that don't have the TH sound, the th sound. Now, if you speak English, you find that kind of hard to believe because TH is part of lots of words that start and end with th. However, if your language does not have, your native language doesn't have the TH sound, you don't even know where to put your mouth, how to form the sound. So it's important that you learn those and you work hard at those and you practice that every day so that instead of saying, this is how I speak, you say, this is how I speak. It's not just consonants. ESL speakers can also have problems with vowels. For example, the I sound, like hit, bit, lip. The I sound doesn't exist in some languages either. And so instead of hearing hit, you hear heat, bit, beat, lip, leap. There's a huge difference between lip and leap. To be clear in your communication, you need to identify sounds from your native language that you don't have in English and practice those because clarity makes a huge difference. Why is clarity so important? Because the human brain is lazy. And if you and I are having a conversation, a dialogue, you speak, I respond, you say something back, I talk again. If when we're listening, we have to decode what you're saying, our brain's going to get tired pretty quickly. Just like if you're speaking too slowly, we get bored, our brain gets bored. Or if you're talking too fast and we're having to really concentrate on what in the world is she saying. If the brain has to decode, it's going to poop out pretty quickly. Believe it or not, the current statistic in 2025 was that the average American had the attention span of, and I've forgotten now, but I think it is 8.5 seconds. That is less than a goldfish that has an attention span of 9 seconds. So if you can't keep people's attention for 8.5 seconds, their brain is going to start going someplace else and you're going to lose them. Clarity and communication is what hooks them and what keeps them there until it's their time to talk. Now, speaking of listening, conversation is indeed a dialogue. Somebody speaks, somebody listens, they respond, we go back and forth. But if you aren't a good listener, you can't be a good communicator. If your brain has gone off in la la land, if you're checking your phone constantly, if you're staring and thinking about something else, those types of things are going to impact your ability to listen. So while part of listening is the speaker's responsibility to make sure that they're clear, it's also your responsibility as the listener to ensure that you're giving the speaker your full attention and giving them every effort to communicate so that you can understand it. Listening really makes a difference. Be the best communicator that you can be. Finally, emotional clarity. The body and the brain sense emotion before they hear words. If I am physically fidgeting, you're going to notice that I'm fidgeting and not be paying attention to what I'm saying because you're watching my hands and trying to figure out what's wrong with me. If I am breathing hard, whether it's because I just ran or because I'm nervous, breathing hard affects the sound of your voice. So they will notice either your breath or they'll notice you're breathing a very breathy sound when you speak. The other thing is whether you're standing or sitting. That impacts your breathing as well. That's why when you're speaking on stage, your voice tends to be a little bit richer as opposed to sitting doing a podcast. For a podcast, you've got to be really careful to make sure that you're sitting straight up. It's easy to slouch, and when you slouch, you scrunched your lungs and you're not getting those big, deep breaths that you want when you're communicating. So you need to make sure that emotionally your head is in the right space when you're having a communication. You want to make sure that your emotions are mirroring what you're talking about. If you're talking about something very somber and you're giggling, there's a disconnect there. And people are not going to understand it, and they're going to be more tied up in why is he not reacting the same way as he's speaking, as opposed to what you're actually saying. So emotional clarity is equally important. This has been a great opportunity to get just a tiny scratch in what clear communication looks like. But in future episodes, I'll be doing a deeper dive into these and other subjects that relate to clear communication. So my question for you is this: which of those categories are you not as strong in? Is it your pause? Is it your pace? Do you use a lot of filler words? Do you articulate and enunciate as clearly as you can? Do you listen? Does your emotion match your speech? If you know what that is, drop it in the chat. I'd love to see what you have to say, because that's my next question. Of all of this broad range of subject that we can deep dive into to discuss communications clarity, which subject should I talk about first? Pace, absolutely, Monique. Boy, that's important, because pace is really critical. There are too many people who either talk too slow or they talk so fast that nobody really understands what they're saying. It's very frustrating because nobody can really be clear on what that doesn't say anything. So thank you. Pace. That's the next thing we'll talk about next Tuesday when we come here. Thank you for investing your time with me today in the Speak to Influence podcast. I hope that you'll continue to join me on Sundays at 7 p.m. and Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where we help you learn to be heard, trusted, and taken seriously. Have an amazing day, everyone. Bye.